Good evening, board members.
Good evening.
Yeah, sorry, we're trying to have a sewer commissioners meeting at the same time over there. Here to speak about some general water quality and water quality issues there. First, even though it's raining tonight, I should say we are still in drought conditions, certainly here in central Mass and throughout most of Massachusetts, certainly on that. So it has, even with the rain, it has not changed a lot there, so we're still in those general conditions over there. One thing I'd like to speak about, first of all, I mean, there's been a lot of discussion and documentation on hexavalent chromium, chromium-6. There was a report that I think was out to the end of September by the Environment Working Group, out there, about some sampling across the country. But we were involved in sampling, as was all towns that had 10,000 or more residents across the United States by EPA. There were 3 rounds of what's known as UCMR 1, 2, and 3, which is unregulated contaminants monitoring rule. All different contaminants, but include hexavalent chromium. It mainly brought about because of the incident in Hinckley, California, back in the 90s. There was a movie about it with Aaron Brockovich, and so there's been a lot of emphasis and a lot of talk about this over there. And as a result of that, we went through 3 different rounds. And in round 3, they brought down the levels as low as you can get them on that, purposely on that. And we tested between 3.4 and 4.1. The limit for the whole country right now is only for total chromium. This was 100 parts per billion. We were in the 3 to 4 range. Out of the United States, there's only one state that has a regulatory amount for hexavalent chromium. It's the state of California, which has a limit of 10, which all water suppliers have to be in compliance with by the year 2020 right now. In California, there's a lot of natural chromium-6 because of the rock formations, especially in the southern part, especially in Southern California, in desert regions out there. So there's a lot of emphasis up on that. The one thing in itself, if we see 3 or 4 in relation to 100, doesn't sound like a very large number. But when you look at the database for all communities in Massachusetts, we were ranking in the top 3. Howard was number 1, 20 parts per billion. Danvers ended up being number 2 at 4.4, and we were at 4.1. Now, we went back to Howard. They found they had a problem with stainless steel piping in the new plant. Chromium certainly comes off of stainless steel, so they were able to get to a non-detect. Danvers had it at 1 well, but their finished water was certainly less. So because of that, we went back and sampled every well. I brought it back to our normal lab, asked them that they can do hexavalent chromium. They said yes. But when they did that, they only really detected at 50 parts and told me it was non-detect. So when I asked them about my results, they're not able to go down low enough. There's no certified labs in Massachusetts or New England that does this type of analysis. So we went back to the original EPA lab, which I find after going through our research is the top lab in the country, Eurofins. They're based out of Monrovia, California, and they have a sub-lab in South Bend, Indiana, just outside of Notre Dame University, actually, there. Very, very knowledgeable. They are the top place in the country. After doing all that, we found that 2 wells, our finished water, I should say, was about 3.2, still in that same range. That's fine. 2 wells, 6.4 showed up at 9.0, and the second well side of that, 3.2, excuse me, was at 6.7. So those kind of alert us. We weren't expecting those type of ranges. Still low, but that to us, to the water department, is a sign that, you know, there could be potentially something else over there. There have been discussions with a lot of people, with the Eurofins lab that's specialists in hexavalent chromium. We spent a lot of time on that. Now we just resampled again today, all those again, plus 2 different configurations, just to see what we are, because it's hard to make an analysis or judgment on one set of samples. So we want to get as much data as we can. I would recommend to the board a couple things over there. And I did talk to DEP. I mean, DEP seemed fine with the low limits. They didn't seem overly excited with that. But in my opinion, I think we should go beyond the DEP. We should go beyond EPA. Because in the background, there is going to be, political climate aside, we could be going to that standard of 10 or lower in the near future, because there's a lot of public outcry already about that. So if we get into that, that could be an issue. Now, spending a lot of time looking at this and getting pricing and stuff, we could put 2, I would recommend to the board that we put 2 observation wells at our western property line toward Metso. there'd be a cost of about $22,000. We would put them at the same depth as those wells. 6.1 and 6.2 are 89 feet, 6.4 is at 74.7 feet. So we would put them down at those levels. These are called couplet wells, where we can monitor and get information. Now we've also gone back and spent a lot of time looking at every property on Bowditch Drive and on Plantation Street. And we did find, going through DEP records, there has been a release of hexavalent chromium at 722 Plantation Street, which is the old Garapi Platers. Now, I just got this information on my phone just a little while ago, which I can certainly read to the board, because we've been looking at the hydrological conditions, how our water comes in. And this guy here, he's an expert on groundwater situations, senior hydrogeologic guy, licensed site professional. I reviewed the few reports for 722 Plantation Street and for the properties located along Bowditch Drive. The former Garapi Platers property at 722 Plantation Street appears to be the likely source of the hexavalent chromium found in the town of Shrewsbury's wells. The results of previous assessment activities indicate that elevated concentrations of chromium were detected at 16,000 parts per million on the soil samples. There's much less data on that second part. Groundwater data indicates that hexavalent chromium was detected in the monitoring wells at the concentration of 16 parts per billion on that property there. The standard was 100, so since they were below 100, the consultant working at the farmer property was able to close out that because it was underneath 100 over there. However, and I'm just reading off of his letter here, one of the requirements of Massachusetts Contingency Plan MCP-310 CMR is to evaluate for conditions of substantial release migration, over there. And part of this definition is that groundwater that has migrated or mitigated from that area more than 200 feet per year and releases into the groundwater that has been, or within 1 year, likely to be detected in a public or private water supply sources. In my opinion, the consultant did not conduct the evaluation needed to assess the full extent of hexavalent chromium plume and did not rule out the conditions of substantial release migrations. So just doing a preliminary assessment on that, just looking at that, we are pointing to 722 Plantation Street as a source of our problems down on our well. And he goes on to say there, based on what we find in groundwater at the western property line, we want to discuss this with Mass DEP. We would like to request that we send additional groundwater assessment and monitoring on the Garapi property as a first step as assessment. Jonathan O'Brien, licensed site professional, senior hydrogeologic.
The Garapi plating is not there anymore.
Not there anymore. There's 2 more buildings, but
the building's still there.
Yeah, there's some new buildings on that site there.
Right.
But when they did the assessment, this goes back all the way to 2000, they had documented releases on that property for hexavalent chromium. And you could have a plume that's moving 200 feet toward us. It's going to take a number of years, to get down toward us. Yeah. So we want to evaluate. I would think, even though we're at low levels, I think it would make sense to evaluate our property, get the necessary data, see if it is coming in. We have the 2 locations that we can get from all the angles there, see what it is, make our assessment at that time, because I would say to the citizens of Shrewsbury and to the board, if another property is contaminating our wells, I mean, I think it behooves us to do that, especially with a $14 million plant, in the process right now. We're going to try to treat for manganese, and then we're going to have another issue. And I've also gone back to the senior people for the Magazor process over there, and I've asked them, because when I evaluate everything in California, where most of this material is over there, most of them, including I think it's Cal Water in Willows, California. I think Glendale, California they do an ion exchange, very expensive type of process over there. But Pacific Gas and Electric, outside of Hinckley, is doing what's known as food-grade ethanol, where you inject ethanol into the aquifer using the bacteria from the ethanol to convert chromium 6 to chromium 3, and they've had very good luck in that. I mean, to give you some idea, that plume is at 4,300 parts per billion is what I'm talking about out in California, much less than we're talking here. But if something can be done bacteria-wise to convert over, it makes a lot more sense than try to remove it, you know, because you get ion exchange. You can have all the waste product to get rid of over there. In California, they have to take it to a smelting place out in Arizona. Very, very expensive over there. Very, very expensive over there. And it's costly to build, and it's costly to maintain. So if you can kind of control it at the source out there, you know, even though it's low levels, I think we owe it to our citizens to investigate it, to identify where is it coming from, how is it getting into drinking water supply in Shrewsbury, and not wait till, you know, sometime the standard gets lower, because I think people have high expectations in Shrewsbury, and we already know we've shown a 9, and we showed a 6.7 on our wells. These tend to go higher rather than lower, you know, and it could be a number of years, you know. So I would recommend that we put the 2 observation type of wells in. It's a cost of around $22,000. That includes the monitoring, that includes all the installation. Once they get someone in here, it takes 5 days to install the wells in there. Because I think the board would need this information before we sign any agreement on a water treatment plant. You know, we need that data.
Is that $22,000 a year, Bob, or $22,000?
$22,000 to install and to get all the data, everything.
And then how many years do you anticipate keeping it?
Well, I think it depends on what we find you from that point. And then if we say, and I've also contacted Metso. Metso is going to do some evaluation on their property there. But what I see might be the problem is they might be shallow. In other words, they could be 15 to 20 feet down, and we're at 89 feet down there. So we might not have representative data, you know.
Where are you going to put the 2 wells?
They're right on the western property line. We have them in angles that would pick up from Garrity Platers, and one that would pick up from the Bowditch Drive area. Okay. 2 angles. We have them down deep enough to be able to monitor. I mean, those were permanent. They would be permanent wells that we would have down. We can monitor them any time over there, because I think we need to know, you know, where is it coming from, how is it getting into our wells, and depending on the quantity and the amount is, you know, how do we treat it? What do we do? Do we do nothing, or do we try to use some other type of thing? Because we don't want to get caught in a treatment plan. I'll find out, all of a sudden we change the limits on hexavalent chromium, and here's a $10 million process we have to add to that now. That doesn't do the town or anyone else any good over there. So I'd rather stay ahead of the curve than to be reactionary to DEP or EPA, especially with the political climate now with the new president-elect. You know, I don't really see environmental rules, you know, changing really that quickly on that. So I think it's going to be up to us really, you know, to do something. But I think right now to get information, to stay ahead of it down there, and I think that the public would like that we're addressing the problem, trying to identify the problem, and trying to come up with some remediation on this.
Mr. Chairman? Oh, go ahead.
Yes,
Are there facilities that have been made to, I assume this is ion exchange chromatography of some sort?
Yes, that's correct, yes.
That would handle a water flow of potentially 6 million gallons a day? You typically think of these things in much smaller quantities than something that approaches millions of gallons a day. And so I'm asking out loud, is there, even if you come to the conclusion we have to do something, what would you do?
Right. Now, I know Glendale, California is a pretty good-sized community. They're just starting to use this right now. I know they're in the millions of gallons. I don't know the flow over there, but they have similar.
But there is something.
Yeah, and it was developed in England. The system that they're using is a new system, ion exchange, but it's just ion exchange base. It's an ion exchange acid or something like that, developed in England. Believe it or not, it's one of the first ones being tried in North America up on that down there. Pacific Gas and Electric is trying with ethanol, food-grade ethanol, injecting the aquifer, using that bacteria to go from chromium 6 to chromium 3 in the aquifer, trying to treat it at the source rather than at the end product over there. Now, in Hinckley, obviously, there's a community up there around 1900, desert. I've been right aside of it. I haven't been in Hinckley, just ironic. I've been in Barstow, which is probably, I think, about 50 miles from there. Very desert, very barren area out. you get near the Arizona border, out in Southern Cal, out there. But with their gas line out there, they're transmitting natural gas, and they have to have compression stations to repressurize the gas at certain places. They have one outside of Hinckley and one just south of there, I believe. So once they have to recompress the gas, they have to cool it in cooling towers, and they use hexavalent chromium as a corrosion controller. And they dump the quantity of 370 million gallons onto the ground, onto online beds, getting into a 6-mile-long plume, which is the largest in the world, hexavalent chromium. The lab that we're using right now is involved in that. They do the analysis out there in Hinckley. They do the analysis for the city of Los Angeles County, and San Bernardino County. So they're very knowledgeable up on that there. So we're using the best laboratory, really, in the country for analysis and for information on this type of substance right now.
Just a follow-up question more to the town manager. In situations where a prior owner, no longer there, had these properties, is there an ability to, whatever legal modifications or ramifications come of this, that would go back over time?
Under the MCP, anyone
Right.
who's ever touched that property is responsible to a certain extent. This is going to be very similar, if it's what Bob is saying proves out, this is going to be very similar to what the town went through when the VOCs were found in the water and there was a settlement.
Yep.
There was a multi-million-dollar settlement at that time.
$6 million was on the settlement.
So we're getting a little down the road. I think we need to.
Okay.
We
need to
need to
get the
pursue
data,
what
but
Bob's
the
saying.
potential is there. There's been a release, documented release, upstream from our wells over there of the same substance, large amounts. Certainly, they've documented at least at 16 parts per billion upstream from our wells. Hydrologically, it goes toward our wells. The direction is facing toward our wells there, so very logically, and this person does agree with that, looking at that, and he's somewhat of an expert in groundwater contamination in New England, so I would have to believe his data, and he looked at every property on Bowditch Drive, all the documentations, and multiple properties, not only that one, multiple properties on Plantation Street, and toward the Worcester Sand and Gravel property also, to see the likelihood of what would be drawing into our wells, and that was his at least initial conclusion, all taking samples on our property over there, and he seemed somewhat confident in that at least the early estimation on that, and he didn't feel that the consultant didn't follow through there either. They just stopped on that, didn't consult with us, didn't investigate any wells anywhere adjacent down there basically, and just said that's it basically on that property. On that there. So here we are today.
Ms. LeBeau?
So a couple questions. So you want to install these observation wells physically in between sites that you have some concerns about and our wells, so you might be able to detect things
Correct.
much more quickly and well prior to changes happening at the wells. Is
Correct.
that, I mean, that's the
Yes,
intent
yeah.
of it, correct?
Yep, that is the intent.
Okay.
Correct.
And then the second thing is you've talked a couple times about this ion process that would transform the chromium 6 into chromium 3.
That was with the that's what the injecting food.
The injection
ethanol.
process.
Ion exchange would basically take it out of the system. You would have a waste, and believe it or not, when other cities and stuff do it, the concentration is about 600 parts per billion. You have to take it to a site that would accept this type of waste, which is somewhat difficult.
Okay,
You
so
can imagine.
I confused these two
Yeah,
mitigation
that's okay.
programs,
It
but
might have been my fault, John.
I don't think so. But
Okay, I'll agree then.
in the one where, I mean, you seem to gain some relief that the chromium 6 becomes chromium 3.
Yes,
Chromium 3 is
non-toxic.
non-toxic. Well,
yes.
that's a good reason for that.
It's in the soils here. Chromium 6, hexavalent chromium, is not really natural here in New England. It's natural out in the western part, southwest Southern California because of rock formations over there. A lot of cities right now are struggling in Southern California because the natural levels are 20 to 30, just from rock formations, without no industrial discharge in Southern California. So California Water Company is really struggling with this right now. You have a natural water of 20 to 30, much higher than we're talking about. How do you get it out there? And they're under the gun by 2020 to have every well and the source water underneath the 10 parts per billion. So they're under the gun here. We're still, we still have some low limitations, but we want to address the problem. We want to identify the problem, and then based on that information, we want to come up to a plan of attack. Well, I mean, what do we do at that point in time over there?
Well, better to do it before we design the plant.
Yes.
Or let it out for bid.
So I would say we try to get the wells in as quickly as possible, get as much data as possible, because they're supposed to, by December 31st, DEP approval, and if we're talking about going to bid January, February, that's 3 months, basically, to get information, yeah.
Ms. Moore?
Is there a business currently at 722 Plantation?
They have a fitness place there, I believe.
Okay, but so it's not a manufacturer, there's nothing else?
Yeah.
that- okay.
Garrett was a metal plating facility
Yeah.
For many, many years over there, and they went out of business for various reasons. But there's contaminated soil on the site, obviously. There's contaminated groundwater on that site. And if you kind of vision, they're up higher like this, and we're right down here, and the lake is right behind us. So
Right.
everything is down gradient exactly from that property.
Well, obviously, I think this makes sense. Thank you for being vigilant about it. I think it's prudent.
And we also checked on our property, because when I heard about Howard, I was thinking to myself, I have stainless steel in my ear stripping towers. I mean, we are creating the problem ourselves. So we identified that we were not. So we isolated just to double check ourselves out there, because sometimes through our own processes we could add chromium. I will say that hexavalent chromium is also monitored at Metso even today, because they weld stainless steel in the building. So they air monitor basically every day for hexavalent chromium in Metso. So that's also in that facility. I did talk at length about where the drains go, the setups over there. Under EPA regulations, you have to monitor for air quality when you're welding. They create valves for the oil, gas, petroleum industries out there, so they weld a lot of stainless steel. Chromium comes off the stainless steel, so when the people are welding, they have to have a certain air quality criteria. So they're already monitoring for hexavalent chromium in Metso, as we speak on that. So that's another little bit of a concern. That's even closer to us over there.
Well, they have monitoring wells in the ground?
They're monitoring wells in the ground, but what I think, Mo, is that they're not very deep. In other words, they might be 15 to 20 feet. I don't know exactly. They're getting us the data within the next couple of weeks on that. I've spoke to them. They're going to get stuff. But if they're 15, 20, and we're down 89 to 75, they might show nothing. And I also should mention that hexavalent chromium, in our terminology, is known as a sinker, basically, because the specific gravity of water is 1.0. Hexavalent chromium is 7.2, so it's going to go low. It's going to stay up. You rather have it floating and make it easier to treat. If you have below 1.0, it will stay up. It's lighter than water. This is 7 times heavier than water. So 7.2 sinks down and also makes it somewhat more mobile to get through over there, so it's more difficult to treat. That's the other problem. We have hexavalent chromium. It's going to go down low and stay low, and then it's going to move also there. So you have to be, it's more involved than if you had a very lightweight, lighter than water substance over there that you can skim off over there. So we know it could be deep. That's why we could be at that 89-foot level quite easily down there. Keep sinking through the ground and moving over there. So that's the second reason why I think from that plume, we could pick it up at those deeper levels up in that area there.
Did you have another question?
All set, thank
Do you have any other comments?
Yep, so we'll proceed accordingly, Bob.
Yep. I haven't got any more manganese. We just took manganese readings on Monday, and I apologize for that. I had to switch wells around from 6.1 over to 6.3 just to get stuff moving over there. So I'll have that data hopefully by the end of the week on that.
How are we doing on cleaning now? Is cleaning and flushing pretty much done?
Yeah, and actually we had very good luck with that, yes. Yeah, everything got finished up, I think, about 2 weeks ago or so, other than we had a water main break that kind of got dirt back into the system out there, but that we had no control over down there. It was very good. I mean, we had a ton of material on North Quincy. That was the worst of it, to be honest with you. See, the problem is that when you try to flush hydrants, it's hard to get enough directional velocity out of it. So you end up kind of skimming the top. You get the top off, and then you have this bottom part that never seems to move off the pipe. This takes the bottom off the pipe. It gets everything through there. I mean, very impressive. The efficiency we can maybe discuss, a little bit more efficient, but the results I thought were very good.
What about up around the Colonial Drive, Rosin Hill area?
Yeah, we flushed some hydrants
That
up in that
flush.
area. We just had a flush up there because of some work, done in town. They stirred up some material over there. So we got most of the material out of there, and Rawson Hill, and Gulf Street, and Boylston Circle.
Do we have a break today, anywhere?
411 Hartford Turnpike, the contractor, and they hit the main down there again,
Okay.
causing us problems.
I saw somebody posted that they had brown water again. I said, it has to be a break.
It was late afternoon, yes, down there. So,
Did they know that what was there? Did the contractor know it was there?
he's been following the pipe along. Supposedly there was a large rock. When he tried to move the rock hit the water main and broke the water main this afternoon over there.
It seems like it's like once a week we have
Oh,
a
yeah, it's always something.
contractor
It's always something.
destroying some piece of our
Yeah,
infrastructure.
And again, people call us, starting out with low pressure, then dirty water, and then we have to shut down again and reopen again. And it's a tough thing. People get upset with us, and it's stuff beyond our control, and sometimes even beyond the contractor's control. So, I mean, strange things happen down North Quincy down there. I mean, they're putting in new condos. They got the banking, not the exposer pipe, but he was cutting the banking down, and you're getting somewhat close. There's no thrust blocks, no restraint on the pipe. The pipe let go, and we have a major water break at 8 o'clock on a Saturday night, so, and we have people calling us all over town. So it's these type of things out there, We go through it every day.
But the program for now, until next spring, is pretty much done? I mean,
Yeah.
you might have to flush here and there if something happens.
Yeah,
but-
pretty much, because the other thing, Mo, I got to think about, I still got the drought still going on, so I got to be
Right.
somewhat careful. When I do the ice pigging, I use a heck of a lot less water than we do with that,
Yeah.
So I'm trying to, I guess, balance the two things, the drought and water quality issues out there too, so I don't want to go too crazy. I'm just trying to keep everything in moderation, because first of all, I got to be sure I get enough water to the town. That's one, and then I got the water quality issues, two, then I guess I get the hexavalent chromium 3 going on, hexachromium 6, but the third item going on over here, so it's always something.
And you've got residential water meters to finish up as well.
We got residential water meters. I am meeting with DEP tomorrow at 3 o'clock to kind of talk about this issue over there too.
We're going to have to bring Phil Leader out of retirement. He knows all about that over there.
I got a box with all his papers. I think I got it at the library right now. I have to dig that up over there and see what that looks like. Yes.
Well, it sounds like, I think we're heading in the right direction. I think you get that information now.
I mean, for
get ahead of it.
$22,000, I think that's a reasonable amount.
Yeah, absolutely.
To get information, but you need it quickly is the thing. We can't wait 6-9 months to start over there.
And even if we have to delay the plan a couple of months, if it makes a difference, if we're going to do something, that makes a lot of
Yeah.
sense.
Then the citizens in town know, the whole scope of it.
Yeah.
And you have the documentation, and you have a plan in front of you. How do you address it? You have your options, and then you can decide at that point, I mean, what's the best option
Right.
down there.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Thanks, Bob.
Thank you.